Hello, welcome back to Big Fellas. It's just myself, Mark, today. Darren's away with some other things, but we have a big episode today with Sam Brown, who is going to be talking to us about nutrition and gut health. But before we get started, you know we love to plug Man v Fat on here. And if you want to get involved, lose some weight and play a bit of football, you can sign up to Man v Fat Football. And if you enter Big Fellas on registration in the coupon code, you'll get your registration fee for just £1. £1, eh? £1 to play football, have fun and lose some weight. Sounds ideal. But without further ado, we're going to move on and we're going to welcome Sam Brown to the podcast. Hello, Sam. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Yes, fantastic. Lovely summer's evening and perfect time to talk about gut health.
Yeah, it's always good to talk about good health.
Fantastic. And so, like I said, this is something that I've been spending a lot of time myself just researching, but I really like your story and I've sort of done a bit of research on that. And so you, from what I understand, have gone into remission for Crohn's disease about 25 years ago through nutrition.
Yeah.
And now you are the nutritionist, shall we say? Tell us a bit more.
Sure, it's a long journey. So my background is actually modeling, and I was traveling the world and living in Tokyo, and some crazy diets being a model, especially the apple diet, which was quite interesting. And by the time I came back, the thing with Crohn's disease is there's many different components that come together to create the situation where Crohn's disease can arise. And I had unfortunately lost my brother while I was away, and then slowly over the next 6 months, my gut just deteriorated. I was in chronic pain. Obviously, there's that component of not knowing how often you're going to go to the loo. And I was losing roughly about, and of course, my mum had just lost my brother and she was very much on that side of, weren't really getting much help from the NHS, was very much looked upon, not really their fault, they see a lot of people, but it's very much looked upon as, she's a model. She's probably got some kind of food, some kind of anorexia or something like that. And so I was very much dismissed. And then eventually my mum actually paid for a consultant. And he then just said, go home, pack a bag, you're going into hospital. And, subsequent investigations, and they diagnosed me with Crohn's disease and said that was very lucky to have gone in because it was getting quite serious. And then I followed the next few years on a medication roller coaster, steroids, on them, off them. Now, obviously, they have new treatments, but back then, that's pretty much what they did, and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. And then it was somebody that just said, have you tried any alternative therapies? And I literally just went through the yellow pages, because being a model, in certain areas, they want you to be really thin. But in Manchester, being a model, they would like you, an 8, a 10, maybe even a 12. And I was getting too thin, or then I would balloon up while I was on steroids. So I wasn't really working very well. And I just went on the yellow pages and I just literally picked a woman who was an alternative therapist. She was the one who put me on a very restricted diet. And I did that for 18 months solid. I mean, I didn't touch a drop of alcohol, didn't smoke anyway. And lots of foods were cut out. And literally, if somebody would cook, do some toast, I would just literally be in tears because it just smelled so good. However, between that and some certain supplements, I got into remission. And then I stayed in remission because I got it down to a few foods that were the culprits, and I eliminated them. And I've managed to stay. So I consider myself very lucky that I met that woman. That then sparked that thing of, well, this secret cannot be just kept with me. I have to learn how to do this with other people. I need to know what I'm doing to be able to pass it on and to reach out to people. And so that sparked the gut specialist side of my clinic. So yeah, it's a great story and I'm very blessed.
Wow, fantastic. And so moving on then to being a gut specialist, tell us more about what that means and the importance of the gut.
Yeah, so, when you start off, once you've done your training, you spend 3 to 4 years, depending on where you join, of training. And then normally you just go into like a general practice type thing, whatever comes. But very, very quickly, I started to hone that down into dealing with IBD, so Crohn's, colitis, IBS, both forms of it, SIBO, which is another acronym, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, reflux, any of the chronic constipation as well. Pretty much that this tube is quite long and lots of different things can go wrong. And it's also an area that people just really don't like talking about. And then of course it just went from strength to strength in that sense of setting up a website, and then, clients talking about me, referrals, that kind of stuff. So yeah, very rewarding, incredibly rewarding.
And I guess, so where do we start then on sort of the gut? Do you want to just give us a brief explanation of how the gut works? And again, we hear a lot about gut health in the news and in the media lately, and it's something I want to sort of focus on more so myself. And so, yeah, I'm curious, sort of like for our listeners, if we maybe start with almost with a layman's term expression,
sure,
understanding, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So obviously we just think about the gut as the fact that, well, we just eat and then eventually it pops out the other side, and it's generally governed by what we fancy. Are we hungry? What we're craving? And we don't really think about anything beyond that. Obviously, it starts with consuming some food, but actually your digestion starts with smelling your food, looking at your food. This is going to stimulate the juices in your stomach, the hydrochloric acid in your stomach, to really get going. Chewing your food, very, very important. Your saliva starts breaking down your food. And again, we don't think of any of that, any of the oral health. And then obviously that bobs down into your stomach, and your stomach kind of like goes like this, slower, but you know what I mean? And then that pops out into your small intestine. Now, this is where more food and more breakdown of food, more digestion happens, and also the absorption of your nutrients happens there. And then it bobs down into the large intestine or the colon, and this is where all your friendly bacteria should be. And they also help us make certain vitamins and support them. They help make all sorts of little compounds, which we can go into, that are good for our health. And it also, a very basic function of eliminating or pulling out all of the water out of the stool. And so then it arrives in the world as we know it as Heidi-ho in the toilet. So that's basically, but that can take a good few days to happen from, one side to the other. There's quite a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of hormones and lots of activity to get it from A to B. So it's crucial to health, mood, weight loss, energy, immune system. It's integral to everything.
Excellent. Okay. And so, so looking through your website, you have it down as one of the 4 pillars of health. So is that important? Yeah. Yes. Do you want to just give us an outline of your 4 pillars of health, just so listeners understand?
So sleep. Oh my gosh, sleep is the first thing. No matter who comes into my clinic, whether it be a metabolic client or a gut client, sleep. You've got to sleep. And so generally your lifestyle will affect how you sleep. Sleep is where you repair. Sleep is where the body clears out cancerous cells. And, that sounds quite frightening, but all of us can develop cancerous cells, but it's the immune system that clears them out. It's responsible for that. It's responsible for obviously restoring energy in the body. So many things happen in your sleep. And of course, then if you've had a good sleep and you've gone through all your cycles of sleep, then you will wake up feeling energized. And that's going to impact your day and the choices that you make and how you can show up to the world, your family, your work, etc. So sleep, although it's ignored by a lot of people, and people don't like the things that you've got to do to put it first. But it really does make a massive impact on everything. Your cravings as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one of the things, and I've mentioned this on the pod before, is when you have a bad night's sleep, you often find yourself eating more the next day.
Yeah.
And so, clearly they're connected and everything.
They're massively connected. So, if you don't sleep well, your sugar regulation, your blood sugar regulation is reduced and your cortisol is naturally increased. Cortisol's job, apart from waking you up, because you get a massive kick of cortisol in the morning to get you up and get you in that shower. Outside of that, cortisol's job is to release energy out of storage. So we're talking realistically here, sugar that's in storage. And your cortisol's job is to release that so that you can utilize it as energy, i.e. running for your life, something along those kind of lines. So when you haven't had enough sleep, your cortisol is just slightly raised. It's just sitting up here. And so you're also tired, and so you're going to go for high density foods, foods that are high in sugars and normally also high in fats. You consume them, they give you a short lift, and your cortisol is raised. So now you have to release insulin to get that out of the blood. Glucose can't stay in the blood. It's really dangerous. So then once your stores are full, and it happens quite quickly, you then have a dip, and anything that's left over, you create fat out of. But you ultimately then you've had a high, now you're having a dip, and so then you're looking for your next thing. So you can come back up here, and then you have a dip. And poor sleep pushes that and pushes your choices that are incorrect to support how you're feeling.
Yeah, no, so totally with you on that, and it all makes sense. It all just comes together sort of when you say that. So sleep's number one. That's the first pillar of health. What are the other three?
Yeah, so definitely microbiome is also in there. Microbiome, just for the simple fact that, there's more of them than there is of us, and they are attached literally to everything. As I say, they are attached to our immune system. They are attached to our mood and our behaviors. They are attached to also how we are digesting food. So 100% you need to correct your microbiome. And obviously that as well is now connected to weight loss as well, and metabolic health. And then the more that we understand about the microbes. So that is definitely another pillar of health. Another one is detoxification. Definitely detoxification.
Alcohol. Is that what you mean by that? Yeah.
Oh, well, we are detoxifying all the time. But yeah, alcohol is, the body's going to prioritize detoxifying alcohol over everything else. And so if you are a regular drinker, your body's ignoring other things that it needs to do. And so we're talking about the body's always creating metabolites. I wouldn't really call them toxins, but they are waste products, if you like. And so some people would call them toxins. So they have to be detoxified. They have to be made into more water soluble, and then they have to be attached to something, and then they are eliminated out the body. And so as a nutritional therapist, we work backwards. So we work on the elimination side first, then we work on the conjugation, on the attachment, and then we work on the phase one of making them more water soluble. If we do it the other way around, and you're bunged up, we're now at the point where we could reabsorb different issues within the body, reabsorb those waste products within the body. And then if we're talking hormones, that can really raise some issues and just generally make you feel quite groggy and quite rubbish. That's definitely another one. Gosh, I'm trying to think what did I miss out?
So we've got sleep, microbiome,
detoxification. I think fiber's got to be another one. Fiber's huge. Fiber, obviously we've had this great big push, haven't we, of protein. I totally agree. It's a buzzword. It's a buzzword for a reason. It's 100% correct. Fiber, though, is really important as it helps us stay satiated. It actually feeds the microbiome. It helps with the conjugation within that detoxification unit. And so that would be another thing that definitely gets worked on. They are very, suppose, boring. It's not exciting, is it really? But they make such an impact on the body, 100%.
Sure. And which one of those pillars do you think gets most neglected by people?
Oh, gosh. I think probably sleep maybe is the one that is the most, because people think that they're going to bed early, but they're not. They think that they're getting enough sleep. They think that they've been asleep properly. But, if you've had a couple of drinks before you've gone to bed, or you've eaten close to bed, you're not going to go through your rhythms. And so even though they don't know they're neglecting the sleep, they are neglecting their sleep.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. And like I said, I probably had my own issues with sleep in the last sort of 3 months or so. I've went through a bit of a tricky breakup, and that had a real negative effect on my sleep more than anything.
Stress.
Yeah. The weird one with it is I could get to sleep fine, but then I'd wake up at like 3 a.m. and then just couldn't get back off, which was probably more frustrating than anything.
The Chinese clock is quite interesting in this sleep matter of what the body is doing at any particular time. And between 1 and 3 is the liver, which is detoxification. And I think the one after that is the spleen. So you're slightly on that cusp, but it's if you follow the Chinese clock, it can give you some indication. So even though we are nutritional therapists, and yes, I tell people to eat more broccoli, there is a big lifestyle attachment to the therapy side of nutrition. And this is where obviously this separates nutritionists and nutritional therapists. We actually do take people through a whole entire journey and look at all of their lifestyle while improving their nutrition.
So back to the gut, which is kind of like what we're focusing on today. How do we look after our guts?
So obviously it's what we eat, unfortunately, but sleep has got a massive component to that as well. When we look at how we sleep and we look at the preparation for sleep, there is a switch off signal. So when you're not actually ingesting food and the light is now, you take your light down, you don't have all your lights on in the house, it signals to the body that we're going to get ready and we're going to be tired. In that moment, when we then have no food in our system, the gut is doing a house cleaning. It's something that we call the migrating motor complex. And so this needs a really nice long time to kind of clear out any partially digested particles of food and any bacteria that has found itself where it shouldn't be. So if you've got bacteria that's maybe you've even ingested or that are translocating themselves, they're coming up through the there is some suggestion that they can travel from the large intestine into the small intestine, or there's an overgrowth in the small intestine, opportunistic bacteria. This timeout gives the gut time to clean out. And that means that it can reduce things like SIBO, so small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and IBS and such as. So your signal to go to sleep is really important for the gut. And then when we're looking at how to improve the gut and how to feed the gut, you've got to take out your super ultra processed food. That's the first thing that's going to absolutely destroy your microbiome. Alcohol is also another thing that's not good for your microbiome. And I think it's quite shocking when we look at, and I had to even address this in myself during that COVID summer that we had. I don't think people realize how little alcohol you should actually have. And then when I looked at my intake, and I was saying, I'm having a couple of glasses each night. Is it wine o'clock? It was the greatest summer ever. And then I looked at it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a heavy drinker. That made me a heavy drinker. And so there is some alcoholism within my family, Rett family, and they don't mind me talking about it. It's a good subject that people should be more open to talking about their relationship with alcohol. And because of that, I was aware that there possibly could be genetic triggers within me that takes that on board, that dopamine chasing all the time of alcohol. And so I had to address that. Definitely. I do tend to go off on a tangent, so please bring me back whenever
you're
you
fine.
want. So alcohol is definitely a big one. And then eating foods that are going to feed the microbiome. So we're talking here definitely an array of your different veggies. All sorts of colours, leaves, peppers, tomatoes, aubergines. As much diversity as you can possibly get, and definitely eating a decent amount at as many meals as you possibly can. So if you eat an abundance of different foods, you're going to have an abundance of different bacteria. Different bacteria do different jobs. And what you want is, if you've got a particular set of bacteria that they produce short chain fatty acids, if this set is down over here, you want another set of bacteria that's going to pick up the slack kind of thing. And that's what a diversity of food will give you, in a diversity of the microbiome. I would definitely, obviously simple carbs and simple sugars. So we don't really look at those and what do they mean. So any white foods or white breads, even, white rice, anything that's made with flour, really. Corn, certain cereals, those kind of things, they tend to be quite processed and quite simple. So those things are going to ruin the microbiome. Obviously, those veggies are going to give you the fiber so that you are eliminating at least once a day. And I know this is quite disgusting. However, I like to look at a chocolate banana. That's what we're aiming for, a chocolate banana at least once a day. Chocolate banana that's not too hard to pass. And it's fairly healthy, once or twice a day. Ideal, realistically. And then obviously good good forms of protein because we want the lining to stay nicely intact. And there's plenty of things in there that help the lining of the stomach stay nice and tight to stop translocation of toxins from the gut getting into the body. And again, that's another kind of side subject that we can discuss if you want.
One of the things I was looking at in sort of gut health was the role or the importance of fermented food. What can you tell me about that?
Our fermented food is the best. So when we look at, these are probiotics really. Fermented food provides you with probiotics, but it's wrapped up in nature. It's wrapped up in everything to take it through down into the depths of the gut where it needs to be. Also, it has an array of different bacteria, even ones that we're not really fully aware of. I mean, the studies on the microbiome and the probiotics side of things, when you go buy your packet of probiotics, there's only so many strains in there. You can't have, even though it's got 10 billion, there's only 10 billion of so many strains, and there's so much more that we don't even know. And so fermented foods are going to give you that array. Best thing about fermented foods also is that while those bacteria are growing within those fermented foods, they make chemicals called postbiotics, which also have really great health benefits within the body. That again, we're not quite there yet on what is understood about them, but we do know that they give you great health benefits. So when you consume fermented foods, you are getting both probiotics and the postbiotics, and even fiber. And you'll find that people that have got irritated guts, IBS and IBD, sometimes they can tolerate things like kefir, milk kefir and things like that, where they may not be able to tolerate a cabbage, say, or, just normal milk in their coffee, say, something like that. So they actually tolerate it in fermented form rather than normal form. Just brilliant. And everybody should be eating some kind of fermented food. It's actually delicious. Kimchi is my favorite. And I like kefir as well.
Cool. Yeah. Do you want to give us any more examples of fermented foods? What kind of things? Kefir, kimchi?
Yeah. Kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, which, people kind of pull the nose up at, but it's actually, and it's
I
actually
like it.
one of the, I do as well. I think anybody, sorry, go on.
Go on. So when I started my weight loss journey, I did the Cambridge weight plan, which basically having sort of 3-4 products a day, but I had like a carbohydrate-free meal in the evening. And sometimes I thought I was kind of lacking on a bit of flavour. I've got a sour taste, if that makes sense. I like sour and tangy food. And so someone said to give it a go, and I thought, I quite like this. And so, I really got into it. And
they are brilliant to add on, especially if you're having, say, eggs in the morning, and I don't know, maybe you might be having a little bit of bacon. I'm not opposed to a bit of bacon, or some salmon or something like that. It's a great side to be able to add some fiber into your day. So, you've got that box ticked, and then you put in probiotics in. So sauerkraut and kimchi just has a bit more of a kick to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kefir, you can do kefir with either milk or water. Actually, the shop bought kefirs, although they're okay, they don't have, they're mass produced, they're not brilliant. There is a company that I used that was Chuckling Goat. They were very good, but it's quite expensive. And so actually to get your own kit for kefir I think it's roughly about £30 maximum. And that gives you your whole kit of everything that you need to make your own kefir. And you just buy milk and do it. Or as I say, coconut water or just normal water. So that's really, really good. And actually with milk kefir, you're looking also at some vitamins in there, some fat-soluble vitamins that are within the milk kefir. So kefir is probably one of the best. Ones that people maybe don't look at is kombucha.
Yep.
So that
I've actually started trying that as well.
Yeah. Great alcohol alternative. Really, really good. So when I mentioned that I had to address my own alcohol, and especially on a sunny day is the worst for me, because I want to sit outside over my dinner and have a lovely glass of iced wine. But kombucha is brilliant to put it in the wine glass, with all the ice and everything, and I'm having something really healthy. So kombucha is a double whammy for me. It makes a great alcoholic-free drink, but it's also full of friendly bacteria. And then the other one that people don't often think about is apple cider vinegar with the mother. So, and this also has great properties of getting the digestion sort of flowing, getting the hydrochloric acid going in the stomach. And then, of course, it does have those that fermented, although that funny bit that you see floating in it, don't worry about it. It doesn't taste bad. And then I just start the day with a little bit of apple cider vinegar in about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons in roughly about 300 ml of water. And I also put a tiny bit of rock salt or sea salt in there just for hydration and making sure that that water actually gets into the system as well. So it's a great way to start the day before you start having anything to eat.
Okay, so it's an early morning sort of thing, this is then, is it?
You can actually have it before any of your meals. There is suggestion that it can help lower blood sugar or help, just keep it slower during meals. But how much of a change that would be, I'm not 100% sure. But from the gut point of view, it's a nice fermented drink to have. I think the dentist probably would say drink it through a straw because it's quite acidic.
Yeah. No, I get that, yeah.
But yeah, you can have it before every meal, but only if you need to, I would say. Once a day is probably fine.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's go back to sort of gut-related sort of illness, or so say you've got someone who's struggling with IBS or reflux or SIBO. What would be the starting point in terms of sort of diet or lifestyle shift? What would you sort of recommend as a sort of starting point?
I think so. I tend to do, unless I've got somebody that's very, very poorly, say something like an IBD, a Crohn's disease, a colitis that really needs intervention very quickly. If somebody's got IBS, we try and look at the triggers, and there's different levels of restriction on foods. Somebody that's got an IBD is going to be very, very restricted. Somebody that's on an IBS, first of all, I'm looking at that symptom. It's either going to be a constipation or a diarrhea or a combination of the two. And that is normally their first, certainly in my experience in clinic, that's normally their first symptom as we create something called a MyMOP, measure your own outcomes. And this helps audit basically the journey that they go on, because quite often clients can forget how poorly they were when they very first started. And always their first symptom is going to the toilet on a consistent basis. So I look at alleviating that symptom of just, tidying up that stool a little bit while changing their diet, restricting their diet. And then depending on whether we start to look at fibers that they can eat, and they tend to be different, whether that is a SIBO or whether that is an IBS. We start addressing fibers that they can eat. Soluble fibers tend to be slightly better for people than insoluble fibers, but there's always going to be outliers of the rule kind of thing. But that's generally how it goes. Psyllium husk for me is a staple in my clinic across the board. Again, metabolic clients or gut clients. Most metabolic clients have gut issues. That is definitely for sure. So psyllium husk is a great thing. It helps to bind water. So if you're constipated, helps to keep the water in the gut. So if you're constipated, it will pull water in the gut. If you have too much water in the gut, it will bind the water in the gut. And so it starts to help make a nice consistency of the stool exiting. And so it can reduce the amount of times that you're going to the toilet. As a bonus, that will feed the microbiome. So that's definitely something that goes in. Normally, I do tend to use a low FODMAP diet or a specific carbohydrate diet. Again, it can depend on whether that is SIBO or IBS, but low FODMAP diets tend to do very well.
So what's the low FODMAP diet? Sorry.
It's basically taking out certain sugars. So we're looking at fermentable, oligosaccharide and disaccharide type sugars. These are basically, they're just starches that the body finds very, very difficult. And the microbiome's just going to have a field day on them. So I call them, they're like bacteria bottom burps, if you like, that's going off in your belly. And then you end up with all this distension, discomfort. The body is quick to kind of trigger elimination. That's another thing that happens. Perhaps we also look at digestion that's coming from further up. So always start north to south as we start to address the underlying causes. Are they producing enough hydrochloric acid in their stomach? Are they breaking that food down well enough? Are they then releasing the enzymes that they need out of the pancreas? Are they producing enough bile? Does that need stimulating? The hydrochloric acid in the stomach will help stimulate those as well. And then do we have, this translocation or this overgrowth of different bacteria in the wrong place? Addressing that migrating motor complex, looking at how often people are eating. Some people are grazing all day. The gut never gets to turn off. Never gets
so you need a gap in between then, do you?
100%. So it's roughly about 3 hours and 45 minutes. I say roughly, and then I give you an exact time, but that's roughly what it is. And then you get, that little bit of time where the house cleaners can come in and kind of sweep up a little bit. And then you have your next meal. There's many people that find it very difficult to go from one meal to a next meal without something in between. And then again, because you are eating on a consistent basis, you are then looking at causing other problems because the house cleaners can't come in. It's like this great big circle. So we look at getting that migrating motor complex going, sort out the symptom of either going to the toilet too much or not going to the toilet enough. Sorting out the fibers and the foods that you can eat. Let's get rid of the triggers while we are looking at healing your gut. And if we're looking at IBD, obviously we're looking at taking down any inflammation as well. And so we can use supplements and diet and things like that to address these issues. It's all very individual. No two people are alike. There are some similarities, but no two people are alike.
Yeah, absolutely. And so moving on to, say, weight gain or weight management, what's the most common misconceptions about sort of gut health, and what's holding people back?
I think the misconception is certainly to the general public that gut health has got nothing to do with weight loss. And so if you are going to look at specific just weight loss alone, it is calories in, calories out. It's a very unpopular view, but that's exactly what it is. And so what nobody talks about is the nuance that goes around that as to why you make the choices that you do make when you know full well that you should be making a different choice. What drives those choices? And so this is where the microbiome can come in. The microbiome creates, can help push those cravings. There can be a push of inflammatory markers from dysbiosis of those simple sugars, simple carbs, etc. If you get dysbiosis and you're not producing, say, something called short chain fatty acids, which are positive chemicals if you like, in the body, they help feed the lining of the gut. They chat to the brain. The gut and the brain are connected through the vagus nerve. So they chat to the brain about what they would like. They change your mood. So if you're low in mood, you're generally more likely to go and pick something that is tasty. So there's a dopamine connection as well, because now you're looking at the dopamine reward. And so all of these have a connection with one another. And something else as well that I think people just kind of mix up a little bit, and that is physical hunger and the cravings. These are two different pathways. But those cravings realistically is what we need to address in clinic, because obviously making the food tasty is great and everything, and making sure all the macros are there, that you're hitting your protein and your fiber to help you stay satiated. But we have to address the dopamine reward pathway so that your cravings you can deal with them. And knowledge is power in all of this, of helping you. Sometimes there has to be an attachment to a little bit of willpower to go, I'm looking at my data that I have collected over the day. I know that I have hit everything that I need to. And I know that this is a craving, this is not hunger. And it's teaching people the difference between the two, allows them then to address, okay, that chocolate is definitely a craving. Is there anything else that I can do that is going to increase my dopamine naturally? And then making sure that they are picking foods that gives them precursors to dopamine. So i.e., again, plenty of protein are precursors to dopamine in the body. And so then they can make better choices. And again, and depression, the microbes are connected via depression two ways. Obviously they chat between themselves anyway, and the immune. And then also we have toxins that are just naturally produced off bacteria called lipopolysaccharides. They also chit chat to the brain. And I think a third thing, if I may, needs to be addressed with people, or needs to be looked at. Do they have any neurodivergence as well? How does that impact them? Can they stand it in the supermarket? Is there too much noise around them? The socialization of food, those kind of things. So when you put them all together, and then you say to somebody, we just got to have willpower, right? Or it's just calories out. And then they're going, no, it's not. I've tried everything. And it's just for the fact that it's not taught to people how to do it. And I do that in clinic. and teach them how to set their own.
And and I think that's it. And I've spent a lot of time recently just looking at ultra processed food and that. And yeah, there's a lot of low calorie food, which is low in sugar and low in everything else, but it's packed full of all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
And so it's really not helping. Again, and I'm not going to go on a rant here, but you'll see fitness trainers who have got, bodies of gods. They look fantastic, and they're preaching how to lose weight and telling you to eat this like ultra low calorie protein yogurt. And I'm just thinking, is that really the right thing? Or is there better things I could be eating? Because my mindset is often like, how did we eat 100 years ago? We weren't eating sort of like 50 calorie protein yogurts 100 years ago.
We weren't. I find this is quite an interesting subject, actually, because as a nutritional therapist, I would always turn around to you and say, the best product is going to be the most natural product. However, there are some people out there that need the volume of food. They need to feel that expansion in the stomach. They need that volume. And so a low calorie or like a low fat, say Greek yogurt with maybe some shavings of dark chocolate, maybe something like a low calorie sweetener. Again, it's not ideal, but we're talking here, how do we get somebody that's maybe, 400 pounds or, several stone overweight, they're in the obese category, they're very unhealthy and they are at grave risk of health issues. What is the balance here? So yeah, if I'm turning around to you and I'm saying, listen, you can eat that steak, don't have a problem with red meat, this demonization of meat is driving me mad. You can eat that steak, you can eat your veggies, you can put a side of sweet potato. And then if you are the kind of person that goes, I always finish with a dessert, always, I'm not going to take that off you. I'm going to turn around to you and say, have some zero fat Greek yogurt that's going to give you that creamy texture, a little bit of monk fruit over it. Frozen strawberries, raspberries, berries, because they're low GI. And I'm going to tell you to, whiz that up, make a couple of puddings for the week or something, and you can have that as your pudding. Brilliant. It ticks a massive box for them. And it also helps with the physical volume of food while you are reducing the amount of calories that they can eat. So it comes in handy. I don't like to see, it's great for an alternative, but say breakfast where it's a great big bowl just of flipping yogurt. And, and I'm like, well, I know how I feel if I eat a great big, it's good, but it doesn't quite keep me going the same as 3 eggs, a couple of slices of bacon, and then a piece of fruit, a lower GI fruit, and some yogurt over it. Now that's my general breakfast. Switch around the bacon. It may be, some turkey or some salmon or something like that. But the 3 eggs are pretty much there every single day. So it makes a difference in people. And I think also something to point out, so I don't like the Instagram thing. I really do struggle with it, even though that's bad for business, but I struggle with it. These people who have body of Adonises, they're generally younger. They generally have not hit the same stresses of life as maybe somebody who is middle-aged. You don't have aging parents, ill parents, and possibly you've just got great genetics. Like athletes,
they've not actually had to lose weight.
They've just got great genetics and they build muscle very, very well. And possibly, some of the people, certainly who I'm dealing with, they've been overweight for a very long time and they're not going to look like that. So, these influencers, do me a flipping favour. Fair enough, I don't mind the odd shot of your body. Great, just to show us that you've walked the walk. But just put it away and show us the food,
Yeah, let's focus on what's important.
I find it difficult. I just don't think it helps, but it's great for their following and then they can reach more people and,
Wow, that's fantastic. You kind of touched on it briefly earlier. But mental health is often sort of tied to gut health. Is there a connection? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so we definitely know that there is a connection. And when I say we, I'm just talking about the community and the scientists out there that are researching this. Definitely know that there is a connection between the gut and the brain. The gut and the brain communicates with each other via something called the vagus nerve. Now, funny enough, if you're the kind of person that is singing in the car, singing in the shower, or something like that, keep doing it. It really tones that vagus nerve. It's a bizarre, very, very bizarre thing. But that's the communication between the gut and the brain. Don't forget, most of your immune system is in the gut. So, it's really important that you do look after it. But there is translocation. There is messaging all the time. There are lipopolysaccharides, as I was saying, that do cross that gut barrier and can travel into the brain and cause brain fog, mood changes, push cravings, create inflammation. This is another good connection as well. So creating inflammation is a component of the immune system. And then that is also then linked to insulin resistance, because I don't think we've really touched on insulin resistance when the body's not really listening to the insulin that's being released, but we can move on to that if you like. But keeping to the gut and the brain, we know 100% that it affects the mood. Now, that's going to tie into mind negotiation. When you are, those moments when you get up and you go in, I'm going to do a workout, and then you might kind of, I just tidy my bedroom. Oh, I need to just do that in the kitchen. Oh, I left that in the garage. I'll just go and do that. And then you look at the clock and you go, oh, I'm a bit late for my workout. I can just do it tomorrow. Don't really need to do it today, do I? And, I'm just going to have some cereals for breakfast. Stuff it. Right, I'm just going to blow the day. Today's a day off. Okay, yeah. So now you've just mind negotiated yourself out of a whole day because of how you're feeling, how your mood is. And so when you look after your gut and you look after your mood, your mind negotiation is not going to be quite as strong. You might then just be able to go, what Mel Robbins does. Mel Robbins is brilliant. Count back through 5 and just do it. Because once you're in it, you're probably going to do it. So it taps into depression, mind negotiation, cravings, and even just, mental health as we then age into, our 70s and 80s, and things like dementia and Alzheimer's. Because again, that's another thing. No one's thinking about the future.
Yeah, that's something we don't often think about the future, I don't think, and it's something we probably all should do more so, definitely.
Definitely.
Go on. You mentioned briefly sort of insulin resistance. Just tell us a bit more about that and sort of...
Yeah, so insulin resistance is when, if you eat something that's fairly sugary, it's especially simple sugars, very quickly digested by the body. It then goes into the blood, and then how the body gets it out of the blood and into the cells to use it for energy is using insulin. And it's kind of like a lock and key system. It's part of the lock and key system to get the sugar into the cells so that they can use it for energy. If you are consistently pushing your insulin, if you're consistently having simple sugars, and you are pushing that system where you are constantly releasing insulin all the time, the body stops listening to it. And so you get insulin resistance. Then the body
almost goes numb to it almost. It's like...
Yeah, it's like a child that's got his fingers in its ears and going...
I've had enough of this.
Yeah, don't want to listen. And so then you have something called insulin resistance. And then eventually, obviously, that will end up in pre-diabetic and then diabetes. So It's important that we then change those sugars that we are eating to be more slow release sugars. And I'm sure everybody has heard all of this. How you pair your sugars as well, so if you're eating a bit of fruit, that's going to raise your blood sugar. But if it's got its skin on and it's with some protein, it's going to slow it right down. Oats and things like that, obviously, the whole oats are another great thing that kind of like, that slow, sustained release of energy. I think it's really important to notice that there's a big thing as well about continuous blood glucose monitoring. And they can be quite interesting and they're not overly expensive, and you can create yourself a baseline. However, I generally change people down into low GI stuff. If somebody's got a weight issue, a very serious weight issue, I generally just put them on a lower carbohydrate diet anyway. I think it's more sustainable, and a lot of that comes from switching out the types of sugars. And I normally keep it to roughly 150 grams of carbs or under. Or if it's going to be over, if somebody's going to take up a lot of training, they can have a little bit more. That's another thing. Muscle should be pillar 5. Protein and muscle should be pillar 5.
Yeah. We'll add that to
most of us are under muscled and over fat.
Yeah.
even skinny people can be that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll start to wind it up there, Sam. But just
Yeah.
one last thing, if you could give sort of 3 actionable steps for sort of guys looking to lose weight, what would they be?
Yeah. Sort out your sleep. 100%. So that means don't eat too. And guys find this very, very difficult. Some women as well. They're generally coming home quite late. So if you're coming home quite late, maybe switch and have your bigger meal. Don't do 2 smaller meals and then a massive meal that's very, very close to bed. If you can't move your meal time away from your bedtime, so sort out your sleep. 100%. Increasing. I'm going to lump these into 2 because I want to give people lots and lots of advice that I can. Increase your protein. I want to realistically be seeing approximately about a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Or that roughly works out as about 1.6 per kilogram, approximately. And then focusing on fibers as well. So push that protein higher and fibers. And then lift weights. I don't care if you're doing it in the gym or if you're doing it at home. I train at home. You do need a baseline, though, obviously, for training at home. You need to know that you're not going to injure yourself. But there's plenty of people to follow online. Book yourself in a little bit of weight, a personal trainer first so that you stay safe. But lift weights. Muscle is a place where sugar can be stored. And if you have healthy muscle, and a decent amount of muscle, you can store lots more. It is metabolically active in a positive way, and it releases anti-inflammatory messengers all over the body. So yeah, focus on your muscle. Yeah, 3 things.
That's awesome.
Shed load more.
Just tell us where can people find you, Sam? Just tell us about your socials.
Yeah, so my
and your website.
handle is Sam Brown Nutrition. So SamBrownNutrition.com. My socials, Instagram and Facebook are kind of linked together, but again, Sam Brown Nutrition. And LinkedIn, which is a little bit more sciencey, again, is Sam Brown Nutrition. So everything is Sam Brown Nutrition. Yeah, if anybody wants to chat, I'm always available, and they can, from my website or from my socials on the LinkedIn thing, the link tree, they can book a 15-minute free appointment with me and chat about their issues, whatever they may be.
We'll put some links into the show notes as well so people can look you up and find you.
Yeah.
So just last thing to say, well, thank you very much for coming on, Sam. Very informative. Really appreciate it. And it's coming on Big Fellas, and we'll see you on the next episode, guys. All right. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.